Hi, I'm Finbar. I'll be your adjudicator for tonight. So overall, I thought this was a very good debate. I was really impressed. I found it quite hard to determine the winner because you're all very good. You should be very proud of yourself. That said, though, there has to be a winner. So I'm going to structure my adjudication by telling you who won, why they won, and then I'll give you some general feedback. So ultimately, I gave this debate to the negative by a margin of 1 point. As I said, it was a really close debate. So I saw two overall issues in this debate, or themes, if you will. Who got the best outcomes for victims and who got the best outcomes for bullies. So, on the first, Team Affirmative tells us that bullies cause a lot of harm, that their victims sometimes commit suicide as a result, and that they fix the issue head on. In response, Team Negative tells us that they can still cyberbully from home. They can cyberbully people from other schools, which is hard to track, so it's worse. And Affirmative's response is to tell us that you can still track them and that parents can also allow them not to access social media. I'm not sure if the second's true, but I don't hear a response, so I'm going to go with it. I think at that point, even if there was some time between when schools caught on to the bullying, I think they still got less. And ultimately, that's very important here because if Negative fails to prove to me that they get less bullying than Affirmative, even if Team Affirmative still gets some. Because they tell us Team Affirmative's counter model was insufficient because people bully for reasons like because of familial issues, which Affirmative fails to fix. I think, though, that this doesn't necessitate that when they return they'll keep bullying, because I think the average person would have to assume that the impact of their issues not being fixed is that they're just not allowed back into the system. I think is maybe reasonable for me to assume that the people deciding this would be good enough and qualified enough to determine this. And I think as well, Negative fails to prove that they get bullying on their side, that they don't get bullying on their side, because Affirmative tells us that counselling isn't insufficient. That's part of the problem. So even if Negatives gives me some compelling pushes, I think because by virtue of the fact that they got more bullying on their side, I gave the issue closely to Team Affirmative. Then as for the second issue, I hear from Team Negative that bullies' education will suffer because their parents might not be able to afford all their resources. Team Affirmative responds by telling me that schools can provide this, but Team Negative then tells me that often parents don't have the time nor care to ensure that this is done, and that often schools are underfunded. So I think the extension of that is that schools might not be able to provide those resources. I think this is important, and it was also a factor which, in another reason, for why they won the debate, which I'll talk about shortly. So, I think Team Affirmative also Negative also tells me that it's also going to be worse for bullies because often they bully because they're abused at home. So it means that it's worse when they spend more time at home. I'm not sure if this is necessarily true of all bullies, but I don't hear a response to this, so I'm going to go with it. Team Negative, having won this issue, then tells me that they should win the debate because of this indirectly, because they tell me that bullies matter more than the victims in my consideration. So they give me two reasons for this. Firstly, that they're still people, but secondly, that the suffering they endure is more severe than that of the victims. So they tell me that often the victims of bullying only commit suicide because of parental issues, and they also tell me that bullies go on to cause more harm or experience more harm, and this harm is greater than that of the victims because it's continual abuse 24/7. They also tell me that when they're kept at home, they often are more likely to get into crime, and I think the average person would infer that this is worse than bullying. So ultimately, I gave this debate to Negative, but it was very, very close, and I think, and that being said, I've got a couple pieces of general feedback. I thought everyone's structure was very good. It was really easy to follow, so I thank you for that. You're all very confident. I think the next step is just to be a little bit more emotive. I think that makes the speech just a little bit more compelling. Maybe that's speaking a little bit more loudly or using your hand gestures to reinforce your points, or just using greater intonation in your speech. I think a second piece of feedback is that everyone brought up the right stuff, or you know what was relevant, you know what wasn't. I think the next step is just to maybe call out something, attack the direct premises, and make sure responding to the most up-to-date and charitable version of the other team's case. I think that makes it a bit easier for you to win. And so that would be like telling me directly why people bully and which reasons maybe influence it more. That said, though, I think everyone was very good. I want to reiterate that, and come see me for individual feedback after this.